now we're humans. What else can it mean? Well, what about Atta meaning? Well, now you've read all your Vedanta, and you've tossed and turned about Advaita and the Shishta Dvaita Atta. Are you now ready to surrender to Bhagavan? Well, that could be Atta too. So this is the Sattvic way of studying. That it's you go deep. It's not a question of finishing a text or moving on to the next text and okay, we'll do a workshop, and that's like Ben and Jerry ice cream. It's limitless, the different flavors you can come up with. So we don't want that kind of study, but nonetheless, having said that, we will finish the text this afternoon, because you know why? Because I just drank a whole cup of coffee, and if that ain't Rajas, I don't know what is.
Okay, good. Before we get going, Vishal has a question based on whatever we were talking about before.
Boliye Maharaj, boliye.
Okay, Hari Om, Acharyaji. So I don't know if it's a question, it's something I thought about in the break, and it's not playing one text over the other, because I am kind of speaking within my limitations. But what I've liked about this text that you've been stating today, it's cutting to the chase, whereas the Yoga Sutras kind of is clinical, methodical. I don't know. This is kind of cutting to the chase. And also, I'm not so sure that these sutras are designed for people like us. Maybe it's either for ascetics or those with an encyclopedic knowledge of Indian philosophy. So I know they're held up with great regard, but I don't know how practical they are in today's world, whereas this seems to cut to the chase. And also, I was thinking about the Ramayana as you were talking, and the story of Shabari, which kind of had a consistency with what you were stating, that she just recited Ram's name and met Ram and showed devotion to Ram, and in fact was held up as being superior to all the other Rishi Munis who were at the kind of event. They were the story in the Ramayana, I guess. So this cuts to the chase, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I agree with everything you just said, and if I may just unpack that a little bit for the others listening, the Yoga Sutras are scholastic texts. They're scholastic texts. You have to be male Brahmana and a Sanskrit, no Sanskrit before you even touch it. That means you had to memorize Panini 4,000 of Vyakarana, 4,000 sutras before you get out of bed. Before you even pick up a sutra text, you have to know Panini. And where you start at 5 years of age, and then maybe by the time you're 11 or 12, you know Sanskrit, you still don't know what. So that kind of scholarship, the sutras are come in that vein, and that's what Vedanta sutras are. That's what the Uttara Mimamsas are. Nyaya, certainly. These are the scholastic erudite texts, the equivalent in the Christian tradition of like the early church fathers, of Augustine, of Aquinas. Most Christians do not read Augustine and Aquinas, and what to speak of the early church fathers like Origen and Tertullian. Unless you're an intellectual or unless you go to a seminary. That's this genre of text of the Yoga Sutras. Bhakti Sutras, as Vishal just said, is precisely, kind of trying to borrow some of that mystique. It's trying to, some of that gravitas. It's trying to take some of that gravitas of being a sutra, because, Bhaktas have always had to struggle with this idea, of caste Brahmanism sticking the nose up and saying, oh, Bhakti is for villagers. All their stories are just for the Gramya Katha, which means, village folk. And that's why Ramanuja, became a formidable Vedantin, but in his heart, he was a Bhakta. He would sit in a temple and chant. Right? So therefore, Bhakti's always had this sort of, I don't know if it's a struggle, but just as Christianity does today, actually. Christianity today, I'm in the religion department at Rutgers, and we have I'm in the religion department, but the philosophy department is a different department, but they have the best philosophy department in the world. Sometimes number one, sometimes number two. They go back and forth with NYU. And they a small contingent, small, they have dozens and dozens. And there's 3 or 4 of them that are Christians. And they have to struggle. I mean, obviously when they're teaching, they're not Christians, they're philosophers of religion. But they have to, they have to try to give some dignity to Christianity is not really right now. It's in this cultural moment. It's not associated with science and intellectuality and intellectual dignity. So they're trying to give some of that gravitas, not using the language of Christianity, never talking about Christ or the Bible, but using the language of philosophy to defend, theism and the notion of substance dualism, that consciousness is different from the soul. Now, I'm giving that as a comparison. So likewise, the Bhakti theologians, for the most part, Bhakti is about listening to the stories and kirtan and puja, which are non-scholastic activities, but amongst those, just as like amongst Christians too, there are those with certain intellectual capabilities who took it upon themselves as their dharma, as their service to Bhagavan, as their offering to give dignity to these traditions. And so while this is not a very scholastic text, but it's kind of in that vein of things, it's user-friendly, and it is giving it's giving a little bit of a sutraic flavor to things. And but also it's kind of, the other thing a sutra does is it organizes, because like before Patanjali, there were so many different kinds of yoga, 6 limbs, 8 limbs, 5 limbs, the different texts, 10 dharanas, 8 jhanas, Buddha talks about, 4 this and 4 that. So all schematized differently, pretty much, ultimately about same basic category of practices, but schematized differently. So another thing an intellectual does is organize things. So Patanjali organizes it. That's why he says Anushasanam, organizes it. And then from that time onwards, the Yoga Sutras becomes the go-to book. It takes its place as one of the 6 schools of thought, and it becomes the prototype that gets appropriated by Jains and Buddhists and Tantrikas and everybody. So that's the other thing a sutra does. It kind of organizes material, and we see here the similar sort of thing about organizing. Well, some say it's this, some say it's that, but this is what Narada says, and is it you need jnana? Some say yes, but Narada says. So that's the other function. But the overall, I think, comment that you're making is, yes, it's user-friendly. Whereas the fact that we in the West are reading the Yoga Sutras is a quirk of history. We shouldn't be. Because when I don't mean that in an elitist sort of way, but Patanjali is assuming anyone reading the Yoga Sutras has thoroughly studied the Upanishads and the Vedanta and the Moksha Dharma and the entire tradition. He's assuming that. It's just like anybody studying, you wouldn't be studying Tertullian, the early church father, if you hadn't never read the Bible. It would make no sense. You wouldn't be studying Augustine even if you hadn't read the New Testament. How could you? So anyone reading Augustine, the a priori assumption is that such a person would have read the Bible. So likewise with the Yoga Sutras. So there's a few things in there. So this is much more user-friendly, but not just as a text. Bhakti is so much more user-friendly. Bhakti is, and it's not a matter of being simple. In fact, the more intelligent one is, perhaps the more one realizes one knows nothing, and that there must be a higher being. And the more one realizes that all one can ultimately do. What does Krishna says in the Gita? Bahunam janmanamante jnanavam mam prapadyante vasudeva sarvam. He says, after many births, a jnani, a knowledge person, after many births realizes Vasudeva Sarvam. Everything is Vasudeva. So maybe this, one might have to go through intellectuality to get to that place. Or one may be a theologian and say, look, I'm tired of people, sticking their nose up at our bhakti traditions. I'm going to write a sutra and give it some scholastic, gravitas. So all of that is somewhat connected to what you said, but your point holds true. Okay? Thank you, Vishal. Yeah. So verse number, any other questions? Verse number, there's no difference between Bhagavan and his bhaktas, 41. Again, this is not Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta is that there's no difference between the Atman and Brahman. Advaita Vedanta says the Atman is like a drop of water and Brahman is like the ocean. And, when the drop is separated, it appears to be separated. But as soon as it reaches the ocean, it loses its individuality. It merges with the ocean. Not that. I'm calling that monism. The Sanskrit texts call it Advaita, non-dwa, dvai, non-dual. But not that. When verse number 41 says that there's no Beda. Beda means Dvaita. Beda is another word for Dvaita. We have Dvaita, Dvaita, Beda, Beda. No, what does it mean that the Bhakta and Bhagavan is one? Well, the Bhakta's mind thinks of nothing other than Bhagavan. Therefore, when we encounter that type of Bhakta, we encounter Bhagavan. No different than encountering Bhagavan in the Murti or the mantra. We encounter Bhagavan in the heart of the Bhakta, because the Bhakta is not capable, the pure Bhakta. Pure, what does pure mean? No kleshas. Even Patanjali uses the language of purity. Shuddhata, right? Shuddha api, pratyaya anupasha. Okay. Tadeva sadhyatam. Seek that. This is stressed much more in bhakti than Patanjali. Sangha. Sangha means association of bhaktas. Patanjali doesn't stress that, because if you're chitta-vritti nirodha, you don't want to need sangha. You want to be by yourself. What do you want sangha for? You get distracted with sangha means coming together. Samga, gum. Samgam. Gum means to gum. So sangha is a community, what the Christians might call fraternity. No, what do they call it? The word. Anyway, it'll come to me. Fellowship. What the Christians call fellowship. Very important in bhakti. You need to hang out with people that have bhakti, otherwise you're going to start thinking you're weird. Sangha. So even in Iyengar yoga, you hang out with Iyengar people. You're doing all of that work in Iyengar yoga. You like to hang out with, you go to Pune, you like to do that. You like to be, otherwise there you are in your home, doing your asana, or even your own family's making fun of you. So the community is important in these sort of active type of practices, not Patanjali. Patanjali is the opposite. Got to go to a lone place. So tadeva sadhyatam. Seek that association of bhaktas. And for all its ills, Corona has, in a way, certainly for me, I was very resistant to any kind of online teaching. And I was forced to do it just 2 months ago, after spring break. And I've now come to see how it can be amazing. You can reach so many people. It's not personal, but it's not impersonal. People ask a question, their face comes right up on the screen. I got Vishal right there now. I can see his silver hair. I can see his, so it can be very personal. Okay, so seek the association of bhaktas. And then that's what the holy places of India are. What are they? What is a holy place? It's why the Bhagavatam is clear about this. He says the holy place is not holy because it's holy, because, some historical event, maybe a little bit. Why is it holy? Because bhaktas go to live there. Why do they go to live there? Because the place, they're going to live somewhere. And so they're going to live in the place where events connected with their form of Ishvara took place. If they're a Ram Bhakta, they're going to go live in Ayodhya. Because the very landscape, whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. This happened here, Ram did this over here, and this is where him and Sita did this. And even if the stories are made up, who cares? The point is, it helps fix the mind on Ram. So therefore, the holy places are holy because the bhaktas live there. That's why we go to Vrindavan. People like me in my tradition, the Krishna bhaktas. And whatever your tradition is, if you're a Shaivite, there's Shaiva places. Varanasi is a big Shiva city. And so on. So all of this connected to verse 42. Tadeva sadhyatam. Seek that association. You have to have association. You're going to associate with something. Either the television, and just nonsense, absolute rubbish, made up. Maya, we're already in Maya, and we're going to double it through the TV. Maya on top of Maya. Good luck with that. Maya squared. We're going to have association. It's going to be a dog. It's going to be a cat. It's going to be a goldfish. It's going to be a garden. It's going to be something. So bhakti, we seek the association of bhaktas. Duhu sangha sarvataiva tyajaha. And one has to give up bad association. Okay, this is not a judgmental statement. It's just that if you're pursuing bhakti, and I mean, like, for example, I have, old friends. It's just, I mentioned this because all of a sudden, after 50 years, I went to an English boarding school. And after 50 years, for some reason, all of a sudden, someone put a bunch of us together. And there we are, all of us, there's about 15 of us now, communicating on this little listserv thing. And, what do you do in a British boarding school? You get drunk. All you do is get drunk and, the usual things. And I could see that Sangha is still in that place. It's still in that place. So it's fine. Okay, as a yogi, we can witness it, blah, 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 blah. But our association is going to pull us in a certain direction. And so if there's association that pulls us in a certain direction away from yoga, and until we become powerful enough that we can pull them back the other way, that's fine. But let's not pretend. Let's not imagine we're some great big Jivan Mukta before we're ready for that. So if we're not able to pull in a yogic direction, then we have to renounce that association. That's what the verse says. Maybe we can revisit it in 10 years when we have a little more Shakti. But we have to be realistic with where we are. And if association is pulling us away from a yogic path and we're committed enough to our yogic path, we have no choice, my friends, but to, sever that association, maybe not in our minds permanently, not in a judgmental way, but in a way to protect ourselves and hope that maybe one day we'll be able to go back and extend a spiritual hand to our old friends and companions. So, but the verse itself simply says, Du Sangha. Du is bad in Sanskrit. So if you look at the Mahabharata, the Kurus, they're all Du, Dushasana, Duryodhana. So Du, Du Gandha, bad smell. So Du Sangha, bad Sangha, Sarvata. It's quite strong, by the way. This verse is quite strong. Sarvata, completely. Tyajaha, must be given up. Because if you let 1%, then that 1% is going to be in your mind. So your mind's now going to be 99%. If you have 10%, well, now it's 90%. And what is bad association for us? The bloody television. What's the TV? I mean, unless it's news or something, or documentary, it's bad. It's Du Sangha. All silly, romance and all, made up rubbish. I mean, it's one thing being in real Maya. That's an actually created Maya. So that Du Sangha, take it or leave it. Kama, Krodha, Moha, Smriti, Brahmsa, Buddhi, Nasha, Sarva, Nasha, Karanatvad. Why do we give up? It's continuation of 42, 3. Why should we give it up, right? Maybe Narada is feeling, maybe that sounds a little judgmental. I need to explain this. Well, because Krama Koda Miti Smriti, it is lust, anger, and delusion, Smriti Brahms and Brahmsa Buddhi, confusion of memory. We forget of the memory. Which memory? The yogic memory. What's the yogic memory? I'm Atman. I am a bhakta, and I seek to perfect my life in this life. I don't want another life. In this life, I've been given a human form of life. Why should I tell myself some story that I can't do it, that I have to come back in another life? No, this life. And we can lose that commitment, that determination with bad association, right? So he says here, it is the cause. Nash, it destroys everything. Nasha sarva. Nasha karanatvad is the cause of destruction. It causes loss. It causes loss of memory, and it is the cause of desire, anger, and illusion. Okay, so if association mostly, if one is not a yogi, then what is one is a bogey. Meaning, if one is not in vidya, then what is one is avidya? Is it one or the other? And what is avidya? I'm body mind. So if I'm body mind, what's the goal of my life? To enjoy my body mind. What is that? Desire. And what else is it? Illusion. Why is it illusion? Because you can never fulfill your body mind. So therefore, if we get sucked back into that type of association, then we start, and it's very subtle. It's very subtle. You know, you might think, oh, I'm just going to go check it, you know, and then Maya creeps in. It doesn't just bang, it smacks, it knocks you off your feet. It comes in subtle, 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 subtle. And it's only when you've deviated quite some distance when you suddenly realize, wait a minute, this is not where I started my yogic journey. And then you have to pick yourself up and put yourself back on the path. And that usually comes with a big sarvam dukkam in the backside, a big kick, suffering. So anyway, there it is. Loss of, what is this bad association? It causes the loss of everything. So let's not imagine prematurely that we are Jivan Muktas and we can go around and be oblivious to the influence that people have on us. One day maybe we can become Jivan Muktas, but not yet. Tarangayate api me sangat. Here, he keeps on this point. He's making quite a big issue here. Samudrayanti. Tarangayita api ime. Even though they're just little waves, this bad association, oh, I'll just go out for a little drink here, or I'll go out for a little, hang out with the, even though those are little waves, he says, it does, oh, it's no big deal, right? Sangat samudrayanti, they become an ocean. It becomes an ocean. So this association. So therefore, he's going back to, it's quite a strong, he's being quite emphatic here. It's kind of interesting. He hasn't said anything very emphatic so far. It's like Patanjali. Where's the only one verse Patanjali is emphatic? And that's after the yamas. When he says Mahavratam, and really Patanjali is not about being in your face. He never uses the injunction, you know, you must, you have to do this, you have, you know, the Gita is a bit more like that, but not Patanjali. He never uses the imperative tense. There's only one verse where he's kind of strong, and that's right after the yamas. He says there's no exceptions but to this great vow. And he specifies, not on your birth, doesn't matter where you're born, what age you're living in, or anything. So likewise, so far we haven't had a very much of a sort of like, you must this or you must that, so far in the text. But we're running into a bit here. So clearly Narada is making, for him, this is very important. He's communicating this to us, of this idea of be very careful of the association we keep. Okay? Take it or leave it. Now, kastarati mayam. Who crosses over Maya? See, this is kind of cool. It's repeated. Kastarati mayam. This is not very much sutra style, by the way. So if you want my speculation, and don't take this seriously, this is just me as a scholar. I get the sense that the author of this is much more comfortable writing, kind of poetry and the normal kind of genre which you would use bhakti. Bhakti is really about poetic, you're trying to write beautiful things as, to describe your beloved God. So I'm getting a sense that this author is much more comfortable with a sort of, a poetic style, but he's trying to sort of, curb that and write a sutra. But here, you never repeat yourself in a sutra. It's got to be minimalistic. There's even a verse that says, the sutra writer takes greater pleasure saving one syllable than the birth of a child. A sutra writer takes more pleasure in saving one syllable from a sutra than the birth of a child. So that's how minimalistic sutras are. You wouldn't repeat like this. So I think but you would do it in poetic texts. Anyway, that's just an aside. Kastarati mayam. Who crosses over Maya? Yeah, again, he's still on the same theme. Ya sangam chajati yo mahananubhavam sevate nirmamo bhavati. He repeats it. He's finishing up the last section. Repeats it. The one who gives up bad association, gives up attachment. Sangha, gives up attachment. Maha anubhavam sevate, who serves the great bhaktas. Serves the great bhaktas. And by the way, just since we're on this, my own guru was a Vrindavan Babaji, passed away, and his was a great lover of Krishna. And his service was the protection of cows. And so he had a goshala, but a huge goshala because the cows are awfully treated in India. When I went to India in the 70s, people respected the cows. The cows lived in their courtyards. But what's happened now is that old generation has all died off. All the youngsters are all crazy about, being a great world power, and India and Bharat Ma, all this, right? And they don't kill the cow because of the culture, but they no longer serve the cow. So now what happens? The cows are wandering around the streets. They're not killed. They're left alone because that's the culture, but they're starving. They're scraggly. They eat plastic bags because they think they're flowers, and the plastic bags go in their intestines. It's awful. You go to India, any of you go to India, look at the cows in the street. Yeah, and they're called a halfway house. It's a halfway house. On the one hand, they're not killed. And on the other hand, they're not served. What kind of an existence is that? Anyway, so my teacher had, this love for cows because he was a Krishna bhakta. And if you, love me, love my dog. So if you love Krishna, you love the cows because Krishna loved the cows. And so our service as his disciples is to maintain his goshala. So this would apply to me, where it says here, for example, Maha Anubhavam Sevite, to serve the great. Well, my teacher's no longer alive, so how do I serve him? I try to follow the instructions he left with us, one of which was to maintain the Goseva, the service of the cows. He would always say, the fate of the cow is the fate of spiritual India. Because the cow, and why the cow? Well, lots of reasons, but here's one reason he would always say. The cow has two qualities, is exhibiting two qualities, niraparadi and para upakari, offends nobody. Cow, they're lovely, gentle creatures. Don't offend anybody. Para upakari, and they serve with everything. They give milk. If you want leather, you just wait till they die, then you can have leather. The cow poop, without cow poop, you wouldn't have cooking in village India. Where are the trees? There's no trees. What do you use for cooking? Cow dung. What do you use for cleaning? Cow dung. Urine is used for medicine. So every part of the cow is used for service. And so therefore we can, and so the cow, those who love the cow will say, in this sense, she represents the highest qualities of a human being. Mundane qualities, cultural qualities, not necessarily adhyatmic. Serve everybody with everything you have and offend nobody. And he would always say, and the fate of the cow, as the fate of the cow becomes more desperate, then the spirituality of India is tagged onto that. That's like it's like a barometer. That was just an aside. So why did I say that? Because we have Maha Anubhavam Sevita. You serve the great, you serve. This is the relationship of the student to the teacher, service. And what else? Nirmama, mama, mine, nirmama, no sense of minus. This is kind of like nirahankara or asmita. So asmita is I, ahankara is I, asmita is I am the body mind. Ahankara is I am the one that does, I'm the body mind, and my body mind is doing stuff. And mama is, and this is all mine. Yes, mama, this is mama, this is mama, this is mama, this is mama. So aham mamayeti, this is the maya. Okay? So nirmama, without any of that mama, minus. No sense of, aparigraha, no sense of possession. 47. Yo vivikta stanam sevate, one who goes to a solitary place. So this is interesting. Yo loka bandham unmolayate, who a solitary place means a place, free of bad association, whatever it could mean, a solitary place. Why solitary? So you're not distracted from your bhajan. Okay, but in the case of a bhakti, that could be a holy place. This doesn't have to be free of people, but it has to be free. That's why people go to the holy places, because ideally, of course, then the holy places in modern India just become more sources of corruption, especially Vrindavan now, because it's 2 hours away from Delhi. And then as Delhi becomes a mega, cosmopolitan, huge metropolis, then all those sort of middle class Indians and middle upper class Indians all come down, and they built a new highway. So now they're all streaming into Vrindavan, buying up all the real estate, building all these glitzy marble ashrams. And what does that do? Creates a whole mafia, a land mafia, a building mafia, and a whole mood. When I went to Vrindavan, a Baba sitting under a tree, and peacocks and parrots and cows. Now it's mafia. It's mafia, and the priests are all all money grab. So things have changed. But ideally, the holy place would be a place where you go because of the association. Anyway, here it says a solitary place, but a solitary place would have been Vrindavan 50 years ago. It would have been a solitary place, and Babas went to live there. Yo loka bandhamun mulayate nistraya gunya bhavati. One tries to rise above the gunas and yogakshema, and stops worrying about yogakshema. How am I going to survive? How am I going to subsist? What's going to happen when I get old? Who's going to, what's going on with my pension fund? That's yogakshema doesn't mean yoga here. Yoga means lots of things, but here yogakshema means maintenance. It's used in the Gita. Krishna says, I'll take care of your yogakshema. Yogakshema vahami aham, that's the Gita. One who surrenders to me, yogakshema vahami aham, I will carry the yogakshema. I'll take care of all that stuff. Where you're going to live, who's going to look after you when you get old. So here again, yogakshema tyajati. He gives up this fear, this clinging to, which we do, especially as we get older. We worry. Okay, so that's the Mahant. That's the, this is all connected to 46. Who crosses over? Who crosses over Maya? Kastarati Mayam. And now he's giving the answer. The one who gives up clinging to, security, worry, fretting, who gives up attachment, who serves a great devotee, who associates with great, who goes to a solitary place, whatever you want, whatever that means, you can do lots of things with that. And who gives up all worldly connections. Loka bandham. Look at the loka bandham of 47. Bandha is cognate with bond. Bond. Remember Indo-European. There's another example. Bond, bandha. And loka is this world. 48. Yo karma phalam chajati. Karmani sanyasati. Tato nirdvandvo bhavati. Karma phalam chajati. Gives up the fruit of work. This is Gita Classic 101. Whole Gita is all about work, but don't be attached to the fruit. You don't give up the work. What do you give up? The phalam. You give up the clinging to the phalam, fruit. Right? It's not the karma tyajati as Advaita would have it. As Advaita would be karma tyajati. Shankara is not comfortable with karma because it's all illusion. Remember? For Advaita. No, bhakti is karma phalam. Give up the fruits. Krishna is very clear about that in the Gita. Karmani sanyasati. What do you give up? You give up karma. You give up actions triggered by desire. Tato nirdvandva. Then one becomes nirdvandva, beyond the dualities. We have nirdvandva in Patanjali. Who recognizing it? Who recognizes it? Ding, 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 ding. Asana, stiram sukham. Tato. Go on. Chime in. Asana. Good. Nirdvandva Nirdvandva. What is it? Nirgataha. Nirdvandva what?
Dvanda abhigataham.
Abhigataha. Abhigata means to go beyond the dvandvas. Well, this is near dvandva. Same thing. No dvandvas, meaning you abhigataha. You go beyond them. Okay. Now, 49. Yo Vedan api sanyasa. You got to give up the Vedas. What does it mean by Vedas, actually? What does it mean by Vedas? The Sanskrit literature is depending on who's talking, they're going to divide it in different ways. But from the Vedanta point of view, you've got the Karma Kanda and the Jnana Kanda. You've got the section of the Vedas that deals with mundane things, Because if you read the old Vedas, what are they? A bunch of hymns to gods asking for stuff. Oh, Indra, you are a great Lord, give us rain, right? Rain meaning, grass, meaning fat cows, meaning milk, means prosperity. So that's what, for us, it would mean materialistic religiosity. Some of you have heard me use this term before. Materialistic religiosity. Okay, it sounds complicated. It's not. Religiosity means any kind of religious activity. Ringing bells, going on pilgrimage, fasting. Materialistic means any kind of religiosity that you're doing for a material reason. Let's call that materialistic religiosity. That's the Veda. You're doing all these highly sophisticated and complicated rites. I'm just reading, actually, the last 2 or 3 days, the Mimamsa Sutras. My goodness, the complexity of the Vedic rituals. Everything had to be precise. I mean, when you took your bath, where the husband sits, where the wife sits, and then what do they eat, what do they don't eat, what is the Brahman, when does he chant, when does he not chant, how do you prepare the implements, how many fires, where do you place them, what's the distance, how many bricks in the fire pit. I mean, volumes and volumes and volumes. Like a computer manual in the old days. Remember the old days when computers came out, they gave you a manual this big. Nowadays they don't. They realize people don't read them. They give you 2 pages saying, okay, hit this button. So that's Veda, all of which is for what? For what? Just to please the gods, to get stuff, to get rain. So he's saying, give that up. Give what up? Materialistic religiosity. Going to the church and putting a candle in front of Padre Pio. Why? Oh, please help me, blah, blah, blah. Pass my exam. That type of religiosity is we're being told to give that up. Why? Because bhakti means complete faith and surrender to Bhagavan. You're not going there with a shopping list. That's business. So, yo vedanapi sanyasyati, one who gives up that kind of religiosity. Kevalam avvichinna anuragam labhate. If we can give that up, then we get exclusive and unceasing devotion. Avvichinna, we've had that in the Yoga Sutras. Where is it? Avvichinna. Is it jati? Is it jati, ayur, desha, avvichinnaha? Right after the yamas, the Mahavratam verse. Right, Jayesh? Maharaj, bataiye.
Yeah, I need to look that up, but I've heard of the word, yes.
Avvichinnaha, it's right after the yamas. Jati, desha, kala, samaya, anavichinnaha, sarvabhauma, mahavratam. It's all right. It is. Take it from me.
Okay.
All right. Oh, go on. Confirm it. Okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay.
Edwin, Vishal has another question.
Yes.
So through all this, I mean, I don't know if you can answer this now. What drives us to becoming established in bhakti or to become a bhakta? Do we have to be in some sort of existential crisis or suffering?
Yeah.
Because you're saying this stuff and I don't see a lot of it because it seems to still be within the world, and maybe I'm being a bit judgmental, kind of still driven by commodification, materialism, whether it's in temples, whether it's in a yoga studio. So what drives us to being these pure devotees?
Well,
how do we cultivate this drive?
There's 3 possibilities. One, which is the standard one for all yoga, sarvam dukkam, suffering. And as the Sankhya Sutra says in its very, very first sutra, when one fails to resolve the suffering by any known means would mean, okay, maybe I make more money, I'll be happy. I change my partner, I'll be happy. These are known means. I move to Hawaii, I'll be happy. And when we fail, we do that for a while, and then when we still fail, then arises the need to know why. Then we maybe start opening up to unknown means, or rather, maybe there's something other than my normal frame of reference. Then we might be ready to consider a spiritual path. So for the vast majority, and that's why it's the first noble truth of Buddhism, sarvam dukkam. Before the path is the fourth truth. Well, what's the first truth? Sarvam dukkam. We realize I'm constantly frustrated in my commodified, consumerized mode of being. I'm constantly seeking something. That means I'm not fulfilled where I am. I'm constantly have this sort of sense that I'm missing something, that I need something. That's really what we really need is Bhagavan. That's what Bhakti will say. But okay, so that's one thing. The second thing is, if we've done Bhakti practice in the past life, then we have all those samskaras which we can't remember, but we have this sort of just inclination, this sort of a drive, this kind of an urge, this just a natural attraction. It just manifests in the mind. Now, nothing magically manifests in the mind. There's no magic anywhere. It's just recycled matter. In this case, it's recycled psychic, samskaric matter of imprints from past life. That could be the second reason. And thirdly, just the pure grace of Bhagavan. And that we cannot identify a cause, because if we could identify a cause, we'd be able to control Bhagavan. If we say Bhagavan's mercy comes from X, Y, and Z, okay, then I do X, Y, and Z. Now I get Bhagavan's mercy. We now have control over Bhagavan. And so therefore, when they say causeless grace, that's what they're emphasizing. Nothing can control Bhagavan. Causeless. It has no cause. Because if it has a cause, and then you can master that cause, then you have control over the effect. If I master a cause, I have control over the effect. So therefore, if we say that the cause of Bhagavan's grace is kirtan, okay, well, I'll do kirtan. Now I've got the mastered the cause, I've mastered the effect, I have control. So that's why the theologians will always say causeless grace. There's no cause, it's grace. And then why do they say that? They say it to underscore the independence and absolute independence of Bhagavan. Nothing can control Bhagavan. So those are three.
Edwin, I'm sorry, is that faith?
Yes. Faith in the causeless Bhagavan. That, yes. One has faith. Faith and this is what makes one like a little child. Bhakti is like being a child, when you just simply are totally dependent on Bhagavan. You're totally dependent. You can't even do anything. Or you're doing your kirtan, you're doing your japa, you're doing your puja, you're doing everything you read about in the books, but you know that all of that's meaningless if Bhagavan doesn't give karuna, if he doesn't give grace. You know that. You know you can't control Bhagavan, but you have to do something. Otherwise, you don't do anything. So what do? You follow everything as much as you can. You get up, do everything the sages tell you to do, the Bhakti Sutras, yeah, you do it all. But you know that you're not going to conquer Bhagavan like that. At best, you're just trying to attract the attention of Bhagavan such that he will deliver grace. That's faith, yes.
Thank you.
It's also knowledge. It's also wisdom.
So the Vichenna came in verse 2-4. Avidya Shetram Uttaresham Prasupta Tannu Vichenna Udaranam. Yeah, so Guruji Ang is
Kshetra Uttaresham Advidya Kshetram Uttaresham
Prasupta Tannu Vichenna.
Vichinnaha. Yeah, but what about the one right after the yamas? Mm-hmm. Go to the yamas, go to 2, whatever it is, 30, 40, somewhere in there. And he lists the yamas, and then right after that, the verse after he lists, he says, Ahimsa Satya, blah, blah. Right then the next verse, what is it?
231, I believe.
Yes.
231.
And what does it say?
Yes. Okay. Jati Punya Anna Vichenya.
Yeah.
Sarva Bhoma Mahavatram.
Exactly. Okay, yeah. So therefore, where are we? So therefore,
can I have a question about what we are talking now? Yeah. So these 3 possibilities that we have to become a bhakti is also what can determine which Bhagavan we want to be devoted to.
It's impossible to answer that question. because on the one hand, the texts talk about, we are free agents, we're not machines that are programmed a certain way. We have free will. So that's called kartritva in Sanskrit. So we have free will, and therefore we have we are free to be attracted to any form of Bhagavan to which our mind is attracted. And they're beautiful, and that's why there's all these forms. And there's forms for sattvic forms and rajasic forms and even tamasic forms. Ishvara comes, it's a form that everybody can connect to. And everyone in whatever social status, even thieves have their form of Kali and Durga, and even criminals in India have their form of Ishvara. Not that that makes their activities okay, but at least by connecting to that form, that connection alone creates purification and creates the possibility, compared to thieves who don't have a Ishvara connection. The thieves that do have an Ishvara connection will slowly make purification, and maybe in the next life they'll be attracted to a different form. But your question is, these three, so is it the mind that's attracted to Bhagavan, or does Bhagavan appear to the Bhakta and in a particular form? We can never know the answer to that. It's somehow it's both. It's, clearly it's our own inclination. Usually what happens is
But
that go ahead.
It has to be a form, or it can be like with no, or it has to have a form. Like
if it's bhakti, bhakti is a relationship between a bhakta and Bhagavan. If we're talking about bhakti, it's devotion. What are you being devoted to? When we're devoted to something, that something has to have some kind of a presence. Otherwise, if it's everything, then it's just Satchidananda. Then we're back into a more sort of a jnana type of spirituality. And that's just a kind of an all-pervading oneness. You wouldn't use the term bhakti for that. You'd use the term jnana for that. If you want to use the term bhakti in its sort of, traditional sense, then it requires a bhakta and a Bhagavan. So now, what is Bhagavan? It's Bhagavan. Van means to possess. Possess what? Bhaga. Bhaga means what? Qualities, forms. So Bhaga means qualities. So Bhagavan is to possess. What is qualities? Qualities have to be in a substance, right? So qualities. So Krishna is what? Quality is color. So Krishna's blue. Shiva is white. That's one quality. And then there are physical qualities. And then there are psychological qualities. Shiva has a certain disposition. Krishna has a more sweetness. These are all qualities. So Bhagavan is the possessor of qualities. So if your question is, two questions. One is, that form of Bhagavan, how do we make a connection with our Ishta Devata? Does that come from us, or does it come from Bhagavan? You can't answer that. You have to, we have to somehow, it's a combination of both. And your second question is, can we just have bhakti to formless? Well, then what is that? Then that's just all-pervading, universal. That's kind of like, that's not personal anymore, so, right? Because personal means it's channeled to a particular form. So now what is it then? If it's not personal, it's impersonal. So therefore, if it's impersonal, it's all-pervading, it's infinite. Well, now we're talking jnana now. We're not talking bhakti anymore.
Okay. So it's the beginning. We need to have a Bhagavan it's the first step.
Well, it depends on which school. No, the bhaktas are going to say the first step, the second step, the middle step, and the final step. Bhakti is eternal.
Okay.
Were you here at the beginning of the course?
Yeah.
You've been here for the whole time?
For the whole time.
Yeah, remember the difference between the Vedanta schools.
Okay, thank you.
You're talking like an Advaita Vedantin. Advaita Vedanta would say, you do bhakti in the beginning to become free of, avidya, and to get out of your selfish little nature and connect with something larger, and Brahman takes a form to facilitate that. And it's, they would say it's not just the first step. They would say you can do that right till the end, but in the end it all dissolves. Form dissolves, you dissolve, God dissolves, the world dissolves into what? Sarvamidam Kalu Brahman, only Brahman remains. All-pervading, infinite, eternal Brahman. There's no you, there's no Bhagavan, there's no world, there's simply an infinite. That's Advaita Vedanta, but not the Vaishnava Vedanta. They don't want that. They want eternal love, supreme being, and they as individuals. So they would take great offense if you said that was a first step. They would say it is first step and final step and eternal truth. So you have to decide which Advaita which Vedanta tradition you're referring to when you say something like that.
Yeah.
That is true of
I
Advaita
understand.
Vedanta. It's not true of other Vedanta.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we take one more question, or?
Yes, Jayesh.
Yeah. So on verse 41, we covered off and we said that there's no difference between him and his devotees. How does that verse fit in with what we started off with, where you mentioned about the three aspects of individualists, pluralists?
Yeah, but remember what
so how does the individualist here fit in then with that verse?
But here, this is not talking about it's not an Advaita verse. You become one in your mind, not one that you're merging. If you are only thinking of Bhagavan, then what have you become? Your mind is now simply, Bhagavan is just simply overtaking your mind. So therefore, there's no difference between the mind of the Bhagavan and Bhagavan, the mind of Bhagavan and Bhagavan, because Bhagavan's in the mind. Not in an Advaita sense, it's a psychological sense. It's not that now, this is not, that verse is not an Advaita verse. It's just, look, where was it? What was the verse number?
Number 41. So are we saying that this is referring to a mind of an individual because they are so absorbed in Bhagwan?
Exactly that. Yeah, you have to we read 41, it's coming after 39. Well, it's coming after 38. This is a section. 38 says it's coming up to 30. Right. How do you get this bhakti? 37. 37 says, well, it comes from chanting and hearing. And then 38 says, but mostly it comes from a great saint. And then 39 says, but that's very difficult to attain, that a real saint. And then 40 says, and meeting the great saint is the grace of Bhagavan. And now he's explaining why a great saint. 41, because there's no difference between Bhagavan and his devotee. What does that mean? The devotee is it's like the servant of the king. Right. The servant does nothing but what so in that sense, that whatever the servant does is what the king wants. So whatever the bhakta is only working and serving and thinking of Bhagavan. So in that sense, he's channeling Bhagavan, but not in an Advaita sense. You meet a real bhakta, you're not going to get anything from that person other than Bhagavan. You don't sit there and chat about the TV and the football scores. Mm-hmm. It's only Bhagavan. In that sense, there's no difference. In a psychological sense.
Okay, I got it now. Yeah.
So going back to 51. So remember what this whole section was, right? Go back to 46. Custody. Who crosses over Maya? That was the question, yes? Custody. Look at the Sanskrit, it's lovely. Custody, Mayam. Who crosses over? And then the answer is given. The one who gives up attachment, who becomes free of ego, serves a great soul, goes to a solitary place, gives up all kleshas, goes beyond the gunas, stops clinging to security, fears of who's going to take care of me. 48, gives up the fruit of work, gives up mundane activity. 49, even religious activity that's materialistic, gives that up as well. That person attains, and then and 50, satarati, that's the one who crosses over. Okay, so 50 is rounding up the answer to 46. Who crosses over? We have the 5 verses. Conclusion. That's the one who crosses over. Salokan starayati, and that person helps others cross over. At that point, we can help others. We can't help others who are still stuck ourselves. So, and tarayati is causative. He causes others to cross over. 51, anirvachaniyam prema sarupam. This is a famous word from Advaita Vedanta. right? Jayesh, we were talking about what is, no, maybe it was Vishal. What was the defect of Advaita Vedanta from the point of view of its opponents? From the point of view of Ramanuja, what's the defect of Advaita? Well, Advaita can't explain what is Maya. If everything is Brahman, then what's this Maya then? Is it something else? It can't be the same as Brahman because Maya means illusion and Brahman means knowledge. It can't be the same thing. Well, is it different? Well, if it's different, then you've got dualism then. You've got two. You've got Maya and you've got Brahman. Well, you don't want that if you're an Advaitin. So therefore, the Vaishnavas for 1200 years would always point to that as the Achilles heel of Advaita. So, but Shankara, how did he respond? Well, he didn't actually respond to that criticism because he was 9th century and Ramanuja is 12th century, 11th century. But the followers of Shankara, when they had to deal with this challenge of their opponents, not just other Vedantins, but the other schools all opposed Advaita Vedanta. Mimamsa opposes it, Nyaya opposes it, Sankhya opposes it. All the schools of Indian philosophy opposed Advaita Vedanta on this issue. Even the Kashmiri Shaiva schools and the Tantra, Shakta schools, they don't accept the world as false. They say it's real, it's Chitti Shakti. So everyone is opposing, the entire Indian philosophical tradition is opposed to Advaita Vedanta. Why is Advaita Vedanta so popular? It's a quirk of history. But the fact of the matter is, all of the other schools within Vedanta and all of the other schools outside of Vedanta all opposed Shankara on this issue. And accepted, great Shankara, accepted in many wonderful things and great wisdom, but on this issue. So what did he say and what did his followers say about where is Maya? You know, is it in, where is it, how do you explain it? And here's the term he used, anirvachaniya. Oh, right, where are we? Oh, my wind blew my page over. 51, anirvachaniya means we cannot express, the answer is beyond words. It's a famous Advaita term. So are we doing okay? Am I yelling and ranting? Are we doing okay? Jayesh, are we doing okay? Well, anirvachaniya is the word that the Advaita tradition gives when challenged about what is the location of Maya? Where is it? Anirvachaniya, it's beyond human comprehension, literally beyond expressibility. This text is using it in a different way. It's not talking about Maya, it's saying prema svarupam. Look at 51. The swarupa, there's our swarupa again. We've had it several times. Third verse, what's the nature of prema? What's the swarupa? What's its essence? You can't describe it. Why can't you describe it? Because we only have, to describe something, you have to have words. Words come from mental concepts. Mental concepts come from samskaras come from material imprints. So you can only describe things for which you have a material samskara in your mind. And the love of God is not like love of a mother or a child. I mean, they use that as the closest thing, but ultimately it's indescribable. Why is it indescribable? Because it's beyond any experience we've ever had. And therefore, when we describe things, we can only draw on our reservoir of known samskaras. That's what memory is. And from memory comes thought, and from thought comes language. So, anirvachaniya, mukashvadanavat. It's like taste. How does a dumb person describe taste? Doesn't have words because he can't speak. It's not a very good, I always thought this was a bit of a, I always thought this was a bit of a clumsy. I would have thought a better thing to say, I don't mean to be presumptuous, but I would have said something like, it's like trying to describe to a blind person form. That's a better analogy because a blind person, there's no way you can describe, if someone is born blind, there's no way you can describe what a tree looks like. How do you do that? You can take the person, they can touch it and feel it, but that's a totally different sensory experience. But anyway, for whatever reason, he uses this metaphor. It's like taste is beyond the ability of words to describe for a mukha, a dumb person. Doesn't have the words. Anyway, take it or leave it. That's what it says. 53. Prakashayate kvapi patre. And where is it revealed then? Krishna Prema. Where does it manifest? In a worthy vessel. the pure mind that's surrendered to Bhagavan. He doesn't say that. I'm saying that. Well, what does it say? A worthy vessel. What is a worthy vessel? Well, all the things he said up to now. A pure, devoted, exclusive mind, exclusively devoted to Bhagavan. We've had all of that. What else does he say about this, right? Remember, Prema Sarupam. Why is he talking about Prema in 51? Why is he talking about the nature of Prema? He's changing topic now. There's a new discussion, right? Because 50 ends the previous one, right? It finishes up. Satarati, Sarati, that's the one who crosses over. Now in new section, why is he talking about Prema Svarupa? Brownie points for anybody who gets it right. Well, go back to verse number 2.
That's what bhakti is. It's the love that is beyond human love.
Yes. What is bhakti? It's prema rupa, amrita svarupa, 2 and 3. So now he's going back to now he's saying, okay, now we had all this little discussion. Now, what is this prema swarupa? What is that? It's just a word. Well, anirvachaniya can never be described, just like taste for a dumb person. But it manifests 53 where the vessel, you can experience it, that's all. Otherwise, you can just throw around words like bliss and all of this. They're just words. Guna rahitam, kamana rahitam, pratikshana vardamanam. Here's our avichinna again, avichinna, same word, Jayesh. Shukshmataram, anubhava rupam. It's an experience, anubhava. Go to the end. It's an experience. It's not just some theoretical thing. Shukshma, very subtle. And it is guna rahitam. It's beyond the gunas. That means it's beyond any other, all our experiences that we've ever had are experiences of things in the gunas. And then we have memories of those. So this is nothing. So therefore we have no memory of it. So therefore we can't describe it. What else are you going to say? So therefore guna rahitam. It's beyond the gunas. Kamana rahitam. It's not karma, again, the same point. It's free of all mundane desires. And pratikshana vardamanam. It's not static. It's growing at every moment. This is the difference between the Atma Swarupa Vastanam. It is blissful, it's Satchit Ananda, but it's a static experience. Static meaning it's unchanging. That's the very definition of the Atman. It's unchanging. Not bhakti, it's ever growing. Ever growing. Pratikshana Vardamanam. It takes place in the mind when we're still embodied. Where does it take place when we die? In the spiritual body. That's a whole other issue, which we are not even going to deal with right now. But we can. Tad prapya, but when we want to finish this text is why. Tad prapya, tad eva avalokayate. Tad eva shrunoti, tad eva bhashayate, tad eva chintayate. Tad prapya. If we get that, if we even get a drop of that, it said before, what happens? Tad eva, you only see Bhagavan everywhere, like the gopis. You see God everywhere, everything. At this point, there's no good, bad, good, enough, just God everywhere. One sees tad eva avaloka, like avalokateshvara, the sea. You only see that. Where are we? Tad eva shrunoti. You can only hear that. Tad eva bhasha. You only speak about that. You're incapable of speaking about anything else. Anything else is just, you forget all your other samskaras. They are irrelevant. They just go back into the subconscious. You only speak about that. Tad eva chintayati. Why? Because you're only ever thinking about that. You're only going to talk about what you think about. Guna tridha, guna bhedat, artadi bhedat va. Sorry, Gauna. Now, inferior bhakti. Remember, we talked about inferior bhakti, asking for stuff, right? We talked about mixed bhakti. So, Gauna, inferior, tridha, it's threefold. Guna beda, depending on the gunas. So, there's sattvic bhakti, rajasic bhakti, tamasic bhakti. Bedat, depending upon the division of so there's inferior bhakti. What he said before is the highest bhakti. Pure bhakti. But now he's saying, well, let's be clear about things that look like bhakti and kind of are bhakti, but they're lower. He doesn't say they're not. He says they're gauni. They're lower. Why are they lower? Because they're mixed. It's like milk, pure milk is different, is better than milk mixed with water. I mean, so milk mixed with water is lower. You could say that's not judgmental. It's just a metaphysical fact. If something's mixed, then it's not pure, right? So you know, 24 karat gold is purer than 12 karat gold. That's not a judgmental statement. It's a metaphysical statement about the composition of something. So therefore, if bhakti is mixed, it's inferior. It's not like pure bhakti. So let's keep going with this. 57, because maybe a lot of us, we do bhakti, especially, you know, coming out of a Christian sort of Abrahamic traditions, that's heavily, I mean, it's pure bhakti is there in Christianity. I'm not saying it's not. And just like Hinduism, most Hinduism is asking for stuff. Sarasvati puja, you know, give me this, get your, whatever it might be. So most religion, we don't have to single out any particular religion, is goni, it's inferior. Why? Because it's asking. So now it's asking for body mind stuff. So we're still trapped in the body mind sense of self. That's called asmita. So here it says there's three kinds of inferior, and uttarasmad, purva, shreyaya bhavati. Each one is higher than the other. So rajasic bhakti is better than tamasic bhakti. Tamasic bhakti can be destructive, remember? Remember the thieves we talked about? There are stories of, you know, for example, you know the English word thug? English word thug. Here's an example of extremely tamasic bhakti. Well, it comes from the English thuggy. It's not an English word, thug. You won't find it in Dickens or Shakespeare. So where do you get it from? Well, the colonials, you know, it came from India. It came into English like chai and Jagannath. It comes in from India. Well, what does it mean in India? The thuggies. Well, who were the thuggies? They were a community of Kali worshippers, Bhadrakali, a blood-accepting form of Kali. Because remember, Ishvara manifests a form for everybody, even for the blood consumers. And they would actually kidnap pilgrims and offer them as human sacrifice. Human sacrifice was very rare, but there were instances of it. And there was one. And they were called thuggies. And they so captured the horrific imagination of the British that the word was so associated in such a dramatic way that it becomes imported into the English language as thug. Well, that's a tamasic bhakti there. They were bhaktas. They were bhaktas. They had the temples. They had the form of Bhadrakali. You can't say they didn't have bhakti. But what is bhakti? A relationship between a bhakta and Bhagavati in this case. And an exchange of you know, you give things, you offer, you try to develop a relationship. So each of these is successively higher. Obviously, Rajasic Bhakti, where you're not, you know, that kind of Tamasic Bhakti is obviously low, very at the bottom of the scale. So that's why 57 says each one is progressively higher. And Sattvic Bhakti, actually Sattvic Bhakti is kind of liberation. Give me liberation. But it's still asking for something. It's not asking for love. It's right. So anyasmat solabhyam bhakto. Bhakti is easier than anyasmat, other paths. Because all you do is surrender, really.
Edwin, could I ask a question about that? You know, when you just said it's not asking for love, is that bhakti, that pure unmixed bhakti, asking for anything? Isn't it? Sorry.
No, nothing. Only service.
Yes,
Only
it's not asking.
Well, it's asking. If it is asking, it's asking for service to the beloved.
Okay.
How can I serve you? Inspire my mind. How can I please you? Tell me what to do. Tell me how I can be a bhakta. So that's beautiful. That's love, right? When you love someone, what do? You try to find out what pleases that person, so you can do that. So it's completely selfless. If that's what that's
what I mean. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, pramana antarasya anapekshatvat svayam pramanatvat. It's its own proof. It doesn't need to be proved by anything else. You don't need to apply the pramanas. You don't need to say, okay, well, how prove it? Prove it. What does logic prove it? What proves it? Is it just scriptural? Is it just words that prove it from the scriptures? Is it agama? No, it's its own proof. You do it and you know and you get it. Shanti Rupat Paramananda Rupa Cha. And it gives Shanti. Of course, it gives a peaceful mind, not that that's the goal. But Paramananda, extreme bliss. Actually, sometimes Paramananda is the opposite of Shanti. When you're in an ecstatic state, your mind is not in a state of Shanti, actually. It's in a state of ecstasy. But it doesn't matter. Shanti Rupat. The bhaktas are peaceful beings. 61. Lokahano chintanakarya niveditatma loka vedat. Because niveditatma loka vedatvat. And lokahano chintanakarya. One shouldn't worry about the loss of material things. Why? Because everything's been given to God. What one has nothing left to lose. It all belongs to Bhagavan. If he wants to take something, he takes it. It's his. So that's the mindset of the bhakta. So how are you going to think it's law? You only think you lose if you think you own something. If you think this is mine, then someone takes it, then you've lost something. If everything's Bhagavan, and Bhagavan wants to take something, what business is it of ours? So that's the mood of the verse. Lokahano chintanakadya. One shouldn't worry about the loss of worldly things. Why? Nivedita atma loga vedatvat. Because everything, one's atman, worldly things, even one's religious things, they've all been offered. But natat siddho loka vyavahara heyaha kintu phala tyagas tat sadhana chakaryam. But one shouldn't give up one until one attains that pure love, like the gopis. Then when Krishna calls with the flute, you give up your duties and you run out to the forest to be with Krishna. And you abandon your children and your husbands and your homesteads. The gopis illustrate that, but we can't imitate that. No, don't imitate that, like pretend that we're on that level. The verse is saying, no, that's until that happens, lokivyavahara heyaha. You shouldn't give up your mundane, your conventional dharmas. Kintu phalas tyagas, but you have to give up the fruits. Stop being clinging to the fruits. Stop doing your duties hoping to get something out of it. That should be given up. That's just basic Bhagavad Gita. Okay? Tat sadhanam, that's the practice. Stri dhana nastika charitram na shravaniyam. Women, by which obviously for women it means men. So sort of like, like romance. Let's call romance. Romance, wealth, atheistic topics. Don't listen to that. When that's your TV for you. What's TV all about? 90% of it about stupid romance. That is illusion. Actors with an inch of makeup on a stage, with a light spotlights, that's our media. 90% of it. So he's talking about books, but for us it means TV and films. He's talking about charitram. A charitra means a story. So listening or reading for them, and not even reading actually. Most people wouldn't have access to books. Books meaning parchments. But anyway, the point is, don't listen. In other words, all of that stuff, what happens to it? The words, whether it's TV, whether it's reading, what happens to those? Whether we hear things, it's all going in our mind. The mind is nothing other than a reservoir of samskaras. It's not anything separate. The mind is not something separate. The empty mind is just a container. And then all the samskaras pour in. They create thoughts, vrittis. If you took all the samskaras out, that's nirodha actually. Then you'd have an empty mind. The mind is just a container. Let's be clear about it. Patanjali calls it a karam ashaya. Ashaya is a container. So one shouldn't put in the container stri, foolish romantic notions, daydreaming about your soulmate. There ain't no soulmate. Bhagavan's your soulmate. All this nonsense of a soulmate. Oh, out there, one day I'm going to meet my soulmate. That's the biggest illusion of them all. You don't want to know where the notion of a soulmate comes from. If we had time, I'd tell you. The Egyptians and Plato, a very strange story indeed. Anyway, so Stri means romance, Dana means wealth, and Nashtika means non-theistic topics. Abhimana dambadikam tyajam. We should give up pride and arrogance. That's obvious. Abhimana means to think I'm in little Ishvara. Tad arpita akila achara. I love the next bit. Sun kama krodha abhimana adikam tasmineva karaniyam. One should give up everything to Bhagavan, and even anger, and if let's say anger comes to the mind, and krodha and all the kleshas, offer that as well. Remember the demons, the big asuras. They weren't even bhaktas. They offered up their mind in hatred. They weren't even trying to do bhakti, and they all got liberated. Bhaktas don't want liberation. I know that. That's a separate issue. The point though is these things come to the mind. What do we do when the kleshas come to our mind? What does a bhakta do? Offers even those to Bhagavan in some form or fashion. Say, Bhagavan, look, here I am. This is my mental state. I offer it to you. Kindly, purify. Kindly manifest your presence so that these things evaporate. Whatever story you tell yourself, it's offered to Bhagavan. That's what the verse says. It's a beautiful verse. Look at it. Even if desire, anger, pride, and the like are present, even they should be offered to Bhagavan. That doesn't mean that we say, oh, it's okay for me then to be desireful and angry. No. It simply means that as a bhakta, everything belongs to Bhagavan, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Obviously, you want it all to be good, but until you get there, when these things come to the mind, what does Patanjali say about the vitarka? Vitarka bhadane pratipaksha bhavanam. When the negative things arise in the mind, pratipaksha bhavanam, think about the consequences. Patanjali says apply jnana to it. Well, bhakti doesn't say that. Not that it's against that, but bhakti, you can do that too. But bhakti says to offer what happens with vitarka bhadane, what happens when the negative things, Bhagavan arpitam, offer it to Bhagavan. So, Trirupa Bhanga Purvakam Nitya Dasya, here, Nitya Bhajanatmakam Prema Karyam, Prema Eva Karyam. Okay. So the three types of bhakti, remember, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamasic. One should rise above them. And what then? One should nitya dasa, nitya kanta, bhajana atmakam, prema karma, prema eva kara. One should just love either in the mood of a servant or in the mood of a lover. One should gain bhajana atmakam, engage only in love, in a bhajana, in a mood of, these are moods of love. Dasya is servant, kanta is lover. Who is the dasya? Hanuman is a great example of dasya. His relationship with Ram. He only wants to be servant. He wants nothing else. He doesn't want to be a friend. He doesn't want to be a dasa. He's the quintessential example of the dasya. And who are the kantas? Who are the lovers? The gopis. The gopis. So that's how we know it's 16th century, actually, from this verse. This is expressing knowledge of the rasa theology that becomes very pronounced in the, it's not foolproof, but I would tend to agree with that. Plus the fact that how else do we know that it wasn't a known text? Because no one ever mentions it. It's like the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. No one ever mentions it till Krishnamacharya plucks it out of obscurity. So we say it was. What does that mean? Nobody ever mentioned it. You got millions of verses of Sanskrit, Vedanta commentaries, yoga commentaries, Mahabharata, Puranas, Purana commentaries, and the commentaries, they talk about the text and they talk about other texts. No one ever mentions the Bhakti Yoga Sutras. What does that mean? Nobody knew it. It wasn't around. What other explanation are you going to say? It was hidden in the cave for 1,000 years? Well, you could say that, but it's hard work. You have to work pretty hard to create a convincing narrative around that. You'd have to be like Krishnamacharya. You went up and some sage gave it to you. Good luck convincing people about that. Possible? No one can say it's not possible, but it takes a lot of legwork to make it work. Anyway, so, sorry about all that. So 3 types of bhakti, one should go beyond that. Right? Beyond what? Give me. Whether it's tamasic, let me kill my enemy. Whether it's rajasic, help me make more money. Whether it's sattvic, help me realize my Atman. All of that has to be given up and replaced with what? Prema. It's twice. Prema karyam. Prema eva karyam. Look at it, repeat it. Look at the last 5 words. Prema karyam. Prema eva karyam. Only love. Only love. What is love? You don't ask for anything in love. And then what kind of love? Well, he gives an example. Dasa. Nitya dasa. Nitya. Eternal. Not just I'm going to be a servant now in this life and then get liberated. No, nitya, eternal. I want to be an eternal servant in this life and the next liberated life as well. Nitya kanta, eternal lover, bhajana atmakam. That's the mood of bhakti. Are we clear? Not just in this life, but in the liberated state as well. Bhakta ekantino mukhya. And who are the topmost bhaktas? Ekantina, the ones who exclusively devoted to God. Not 50-50, my guru would always say, 50-50. It was the only word in English he knew. I don't know where he got it from. He knew one word. And he would always say, Aap log sa 50-50 wale hai. And he had no teeth because he was very old. So he wouldn't say 50, he would go 50-50. He said, you are all 50-50. You want to have a little yoga and a little boga. Aisa kuch nahi milta hai, he would always say. You won't get anything like that. You won't get it. You won't get your boga. Your boga will let you down because boga always does let you down. And you know, okay, yoga will give you a little sattva, a little peace. That's sure. You get little good side effects, but you won't get the goal. Anyway, what do the bhaktas do? Kanta varoda romansh chashrubihi parasparam lapamanaha pavayanti kulani prithvimcha. They talk to one another about their beloved with their voices choking with love. When you're a Krishna bhakta and you try to talk about Krishna, you can't even get the story out. You start crying. That's what kanta avaroda. Your kanta avaroda, your throat is blocked. What does that mean, throat is blocked? You're crying. Your romance chashrubi, your hair standing on end. Romance, ashrubi, tears are pouring out of your eyes. These are physiological symptoms that come from extreme states of bhakti. And parasparam lapamanaha, and they talk amongst themselves about their beloved Lord. And they pavayanti kulani prithvimcha, they purify their kulas, their own family, and the whole world is purified by their presence. Meaning, well, kula was sort of important in ancient India, everywhere in the world, you know, your family tradition. So they purify all their ancestors, basically, is what he's saying. Kula is your family lineage. Here's, we were talking about this before. Tirti kurvanti tirtani, sukarmi kurvanti kurmani, sat shastri kurvanti shastrani. You see these syntactical. They make the holy places holy. We were saying this before. It's not that the holy place is just holy because it's got rocks and a sacred river. Well, partly it might, but it's really the saints who make the holy places holy. They make it holy. They make work holy, right? And they make the Shastra. They make teachings into two teachings. How? They exemplify it. Otherwise what? Otherwise we're reading a bunch of books and what? Sitting on a bum, watching telly. They make the Shastra real by exemplifying it. They inspire us to deepen our spiritual practice. So they make the Shastras real. What does that mean? They make it come alive. Look at the Sanskrit. Sat Shastrani Kurvanti Shastrani. They make the Shastra into Sat Shastra, into real. Sat means present continuous. Being, into real living Shastra. Tanmayaha. They completely absorb, like Chinmaya. Chinmaya, made of chit. This is Tanmaya. They're made of Bhagavan. What does that mean? They're made of Bhagavan. Their mind is absorbed in Bhagavan. There's nothing else in their minds. Nasti te sujati vidya rupa kula dhana kriyadi. But there's no difference amongst them in terms of, well, my jati, my family. It's a big thing in ancient India, everywhere else in the world too. What family are you? What's your caste? What's your gotra? What's your kula? None of that. They make no distinction in jati. Vidya, learning. Whoa, learning. Oh, have you studied Vedanta? Oh, there's a big Pandit. Oh, the big shot. None of that. Rupa, beauty. Are you handsome? Are you beautiful? None of that. Kula. What's your family? Okay, jati means lineage. Kula means family. Dhana, how much money do you have? Kriya, what is your accomplishment in life? None of that of any interest to them whatsoever. All of these divisions that we judge each other and compare each other, all of that's meaningless to the bhaktas, these high-level bhaktas. Yata stadiya, why? Because they're his, they belong to him, everything, and therefore everything belongs to him. They don't think of these things as belonging to them. So there we are. This is the Paramahamsa, the topmost bhaktas. Bado, I love this one. Bado na avalambyaha. One shouldn't get involved in philosophical debate. All this dvaita, advaita. Well, that's fine. The theologian may have to do that as a dharma, but ultimately if you want to absorb your mind in that, fine, you can do that, but you won't get bhakti that way. Why should the alambana? Alambana, we know alambana from yoga. Alambana, fixing the mind. Don't fix your mind. This, in other words, not jnana yoga. Vada. Why? Why? Not just because of some sectarian statement, but why? Bahulya vakas shatvad. Aniyatatvacha, because it's endless. Did they ever resolve there after 1200 years of debate? Advaita, Vishishta, Dvaita. Never resolved. The lineage just continue the same old conversation, the same old debates. Nobody came out ahead. So it's infinite. And Bahuva, and there's so many points of view. In philosophy, there's so many points of view. No one has ever called the final shot in philosophy. Plato, Aristotle, poke holes, their own students poke holes in their teachings. I always forget, is Plato the student of Aristotle or the other way around? I think Aristotle was a student of Plato, wasn't he? Can somebody type that into the computer? I think Plato was the teacher of Aristotle. Can someone check that? Or is it the other way around? But the point is, your own student, either way, your own student criticizes you. I was reading the Mimamsa Sutra. There is two great commentaries on Mimamsa Sutras, Kumarila and Bhatta, Gopal Bhatta. And Gopal Bhatta was the guru, and Kumarila completely disagreed with his teacher. Who is the student of who?
Plato was the teacher.
Yes. So Aristotle completely disagreed with Plato, Platonic notions of the psyche and so forth. What point am I making? 75. So many, it's inconclusive. Bahulya, Vaka, Saatvad. Bahulya, many. Vaka, voices, points of view. And Aniyata, Niyata, Aniyata, it's never conclusive. No one is, and there's no philosophy that's going to conquer human thought. And that's it. Grand finale statement. It's endless. Bhakti Shastrani, Mananiyani. One should follow the Bhakti Shastra. That's not philosophy. What is it then? It's stories of Bhagavan. The Bhakti Shastras are vehicles transmitting Bhagavan in the form of these beautiful stories. They're not out to prove any philosophical point of view. So one should absorb the mind in Bhakti Shastra, scriptures. Tad bodha karmani karaniya. And one should follow tad bodha, the acts, and then one should do things that tad bodha like Buddha, that awaken what? Bhakti. Tad bodha karmani, the acts that awaken Bhakti. Karaniyani. They're the acts that one should do. Okay. Sukha dukkha icha labhadi tyakte kale pratikshamane kshanardam api vyartam nanayam. So one shouldn't even waste half a moment not contemplating Bhagavan. Not even half a moment. Not even kshana ardam. Kshana is the smallest unit of time. It's the time it takes for an atom to move from its place to the immediately adjacent place. That's infinitesimal point. Not even that kshana should be used, wasted. because we don't know when we're going to lose the human form of life. We never think we're going to die until it hits us. This is the great illusion that Yudhisthira Maharaj in the Mahabharata. He was asked by he had to answer 100 questions by the Yaksha. 100 questions that his brother actually died. They drank poison water, the 5 Pandavas, after the war. Before the war. And so the Yaksha, this powerful being in the forest, said, okay, I'll bring them all back to, you have to, life, your 4 brothers, but you have to answer my 100 questions. So he gets through it, Dharma, all kinds of Dharma sort of requests. And finally, okay, got them all right, 99. Final question. The Yaksha, right, this being, says to Yudhishthira, right, the eldest of the Pandavas, the 5 Pandavas, we know Arjuna from the Gita, that's the middle one. So the eldest one, very dharmic, son of Dharma. And the last question, and the question is, what is the most amazing thing in the world? And Yudhishthira immediately answered, the most amazing thing is that we see death everywhere, but we don't really think we're going to die. Look at it with Corona. Look at it. Death everywhere, right? These people going out and partying. Why they do that? Why is Trump not wearing a mask? Because deep down, he thinks he's somehow exempt. And this is the Maya of all beings. So therefore, where were we? Not even half a moment. Because that death is less than half a moment. The actual moment of death, boom, is a half a moment. I mean, you might lie in your deathbed for a week, but the actual point of death is an instant point of death. So and we don't know when that's going to come. So not even half a moment should be wasted. And one sukha dukkha ichcha labha, one should give up all this sukha dukkha, seeking happiness, trying to avoid distress, and ichcha, desires, labha, trying to attain things. Give it all up and spend one's life in bhakti. This is high level. And then, we got our yamas 7 day, ahimsa, satya, shocha. Notice a little bit different. The yamas, take different flavors. So ahimsa, satya, shocha, daya, astikyadi, charityani, paripalaniyani. And we should accept what kind of behaviors? Well, ahimsa are regular yogic ones. Satya, cleanliness. But notice a new one here, daya, compassion. This is the Maitri, I suppose, of Patanjali. Those kinds of behavior. Ashtika, notice, ashtika, theism, Ishvara Pranidhana. Ashti means there is. Ashti, there is what? There is what? A God. Literally, astika is the word for theism in Indian philosophy. It literally means there isness. There isness. Well, there is what? There is a God. No, ism. We have theism, theoism. They have astika. So almost there, sarvada sarvabhavena nischinter bhagavaneva bhajaniya. In all times, in all places, with all one's mind, and without nischinta, without any worry, bhagavan eva bhajaniya. One should bhajan, worship God. All times, all places, no worry. No worry means Bhagavan, everything belongs to Bhagavan. I belong to Bhagavan. All my situation belongs to Bhagavan. So why should I worry? Bhagavan will take care of all my needs. That's what it means to be free of worry. What does it mean in the Jnana traditions? It means different. In the Jnana tradition, you have to constantly be telling yourself, oh, I'm up and I'm up and I'm up and I'm not this body or whatever's going on around me. That's not me. That's not me. That's a very different kind of a mental practice. A different way of trying to be free of worry. But here in Bhakti, it's surrender. And not, by the way, it's not that Bhakti rejects all that jnana. It appropriates it, but it's just but it supersedes it. It just takes that to a whole other level of connectedness with Bhagavan. So we're almost there, my friends. We're going to verse 84, and I guess we don't have time for our Krishna story, and we'll have to save that for another day. All right, so we're on 4 more verses, and then we'll take questions. Sa kirtyamanaha shigram eva avirbhavati anubhavayati bhaktam. Kirtyamana, being glorified. Kirtan, the kirtya, different form of that word, that verb. Shigram eva avirbhavati. God quickly manifests, is what the sutra says. God quickly manifests. Anubhavayate bhaktan, and gives the bhaktas experience, not just theory. Gives them the taste, which means, what does that mean? Manifests in their minds his own presence. That's the experience. Bhaktas are not interested in Svarupa Revastanam. They're not interested in the experience of the Atman. They don't reject it. I mean, if that comes along, fine. But that's not the goal. The goal is to experience Bhagavan in Bhagavan's Rupa, in Bhagavan's form. I want to experience that and be connected to that and develop a relationship with that. Okay? So, but the verse is saying, Shigram is the main verb, quickly. Shigram is quickly. Tri satyasya bhaktir eva gariyasi, bhaktir eva gariyasi. Tri satyasya, from the three truths, bhaktir eva gariyasi, bhaktir eva gariyasi. Bhakti is the highest, bhakti is the highest. I can't remember what the three truths were. I put a footnote in there. I wrote this a long time ago. What are the three? Because there's different possibilities. It could be sattva, rajas, and tamas.
I think he said it was karma, jnana, and bhakti.
It could be that, yes. It could be the yoga path, the jnana path, and the karma path. Or maybe, where is the footnote?
On the page.
On the actual page?
No, you have to open to the other part of the book. But I've written karma, jnana, and bhakti, so maybe you referred to it previously.
So from those three different paths, bhakti is the highest. That makes sense, because he's saying bhakti is the highest, so bhakti must be one of them. That makes sense. It's either karma and jnana or yoga and jnana. Okay, now, Guna Mahatmya Shakti, Rupa Shakti, Puja Shakti, Smarana Shakti, Dasya Shakti, Sakya Shakti, Vatsalya Shakti, Kanta Shakti, Atmani Veda Shakti, Tanmayata Shakti, Paramaviraha Shakti, Rupa Ekada Api Ekada Sadaha Bhavati. So even though it's only one, it takes 11 forms. It's infinite forms, but they like to talk about actually, normally it's 9. But here's 11 ways that bhakti manifests, and what are they? Okay, Guna Mahatmya. Ashakti means attachment. These are all Ashaktis. They're all attachments. These are good attachments. Why are they good? Because they're attachments to God. In what form? Guna Mahatmya, the first one on the list. Attached to the glories of God's guna, qualities. This is not sattva, rajas, and tamas guna. Guna means qualities. It doesn't have to be prakritic. It can be spiritual guna. Saguna, Brahman. So attachment to the qualities of Bhagavan, right? Krishna is beautiful. His devotees are attached to his playfulness, his loving, his little Dodi, his little whatever, Rama's bhaktas, qualities of Rama, Dharma, and righteousness, qualities of Shiva, all wonderful qualities of attachment and kindness, and he gives grace to all of the misfits of the world, the ghosts and the goblins. These are Mahatmyas, the gunas. These are gunas. Each form has a guna, has qualities. Kali has her qualities, and she wears her skulls. Why does she do that? To remind her devotees not to get attached to this world, because that's how it ends, as a skull. So therefore, these are all qualities. She looks ghastly if you don't understand her message, but for the bhaktas, Kali is Ma. She's a loving mother, making sure that they don't waste their human life. So anyway, these are Guna Mahatmyas. Rupa Shakti, attachment to the form of God. Attachment to the form. God has a form. You get attached to it. If you fall in love with a mundane person, if you're attached to their body, what are you going to do when the body changes and becomes fat or old? Then what happens to the Shakti? Throw it out the window. Not Bhagavan, but the form is eternal. So Rupa Shakti, Puja Shakti, attachment to Puja. Puja will become very attached if you do it with your heart. It's your own personal Bhagavan. Nobody else's. Puja is your Bhagavan, nobody else's. It's the one Bhagavan, but he's in your house, he's your Bhagavan. You're the one that takes care of him. Nothing more personal than that. Smarana Shakti, Shakti, attachment to the memory, Dasya Shakti, attachment to being a servant like Hanuman. He's totally Shakti, totally attached to that. Sakya Shakti, or friendship, like Arjuna has a friendship relationship. Vatsalya, the mother of Krishna, Yashoda, she has Vatsalya, paternal, she's attached as a mother, she's always worrying. What's the nature of a mother's mind? Always worrying about the well-being of the child. What if my child, has he eaten enough? Has he eaten the right food? He's going out to play. What if there's bugs? What if there's a hornet's nest? This is the nature of a motherly love. It's actually full of anxiety, but love anxiety. Always, because the child is so vulnerable. And anything can happen in any second. Oh, my child is crying. Why? Did he eat something? So the nature of motherly love is actually anxiety, if you think about it. So anyway, but of a very high level. It's not a selfish anxiety, but it's a loving anxiety. All right. So, and so on. These are all the 11 forms. Right? Did we finish? No. Kanta Shakti, the lover, there's only one. When they talk about Kanta, they're talking about the gopis. I mean, you could try to stretch it to be, Vishnu and Lakshmi and Sitaram, but it doesn't work. They're not lovers. They are dharmic eternal consorts. That's not a lover. A Kanta is somebody that goes with someone other than a husband. And that's what the gopis did. They risked everything. They even transgressed dharma. When love got to that level, for Krishna, they didn't even think, oh, I'm married, I got children to feed. They they abandoned their dharma. And when you go home, read Gita 1866, Sarva Dharman Paritya, give up all dharma. Krishna says, even in the Gita. He doesn't say how to do that. The gopis show us how to do that. 1866, make a note of it. Atma Nivedana Shakti. What else? Surrendering everything. Paramaviraha Shakti, attached to the, being, Paramaviraha means always feeling the absence of God. And finally, attachment to Rupa Eka, that ultimately I'm a spark of God. I am nothing but a tiny little fraction of God. And so now we have a list of all the great authorities known to Hindu culture. And even Vyas is there. Patanjali didn't make it into the list, but Vyas did. And so, iti evam vadanti jana jalpa nirbhaya, jana jalpa nirbhaya ekamataha. So they all say this, all the great authority. In other words, Narada is going to end the text by not just, he wants to say, it's not just me saying all of this, all the great authorities known to Indian culture say it with one voice, ekamataha. Yeah, okay, and who are the great authorities? And he lists them, the Kumaras. You may recognize some of the names. Vyasa, well, you should know Vyasa as the commentator on the sutras. Shuka, Shandilya was mentioned earlier. Gargar, they both gave definitions of bhakti. Vishnu, Kaundinya, Shesha, there's Shesha, that's Patanjali. Shesha, Uddhava, Aruni, Bali, Hanuman, some of you will know from Neem Karoli Baba culture, Hanuman, the Hanuman Chalisa, Vibhishana, and others. And finally, Idam Narada Proktam Shivanushasana Vishvash Iti Shradate Sa Bhaktiman Bhavati Sa Preshtam Labate. One who, this spoken by Narad, auspicious teachings that were spoken by the one who listens to them with faith, Bhaktiman becomes one endowed with bhakti. Preshtam labate, the last two, he repeats it again. Preshtam labate, sa preshtam labate, sa preshtam. That one attains the beloved. That one attains the beloved. We made it through, my friends. Good job. We'll take some questions and And as you can see, it's a beautiful day here. And I have poison ivy to pull up. That's my dharma for today. I'll try to remember Bhagavan, but I won't offer him poison ivy. But
Michelle has a question.
Yeah.
Hari Om, Acharya-ji, I have a question. So it's slightly mischievous, but it's something I've genuinely thought as we've been speaking, or you've been speaking. So it's coming from a slightly ideological or sectarian stance. To fully embrace bhakti, why not go to a Hindu temple?
There's no reason why you should not go to a Hindu temple, but most Hindu temples, what are most people going there for? Asking Bhagavan for something. It's pious, it's beautiful. People get dressed up, you know, the ladies put on their nice silk saris. Why are they doing that? They want to please Bhagavan. And they make a special time, they bring the kids, they want the kids to sort of, you know, try and get some sense of being Hindu. It's all beautiful, but you know, you for the most part, people are not going there to surrender their whole month undone. They're going there because culturally and piety and devotion. I'm not saying there's not devotion, but for the most part, you know, people go, same as churches and mosques or anything else, not a Hindu temple, and most places of worship are usually not going to surrender one's whole being. They're going to ask for a little, you know, or, you know, just to be pious and just to please Bhagavan. So nothing wrong with going to a Hindu temple. But if you go to a Hindu temple, if you're a real bhakta, you're going to be looking for people. If you're at a point where you want to give your life as much as possible to Bhagavan, you'll be looking within the temple for us, within that, a smaller sangha of people that are much more really serious about actually dedicating and trying to work to a place where they can dedicate everything to Bhagavan. You'll find them in I would think, in most temples. Which temple are you talking about? Swami Narayan, ISKCON?
Swami Narayan temple. I mean, the follow-up was, because my wife very much is ritualistic, and she's often wondered why I not been so much. So, I mean, I guess a part of me, that's why I went towards the yogic path. But I just found it interesting, the notion of personal practice, and then you're looking for a satsang or sangha, a community of like-minded practitioners, which I didn't necessarily find within the Hindu temple, but maybe that was kind of emblematic of my own practice. Plus, I didn't know where to look in the right places. It's something I've not necessarily found within yoga studios, because there is always that kind of commercial aspect to them, which, you know, so within myself, I've always had a tension between, on the one side, Hindu temple, and the other side, the yoga studios, and I'm caught in between. You know, there's obviously pluses and minuses to both, as you've kind of mentioned, but it sounded very much oriented towards Hindu sentiment, what you've stated in today's lecture.
Well, that's because bhakti hasn't really, you know, I mean, the yoga studios are, you know, they do kirtan, but they're not, you know, most Westerners are going to find it challenging to surrender to a form of Ishvara. I mean, the Hare Krishnas made that transition. So there you have Westerners who really are deep level bhaktas. Swami Narayan are mostly Gujaratis. You won't find many foreigners in the Swami Narayan temple. So it's very, not even Indian. It's geographically more specific than that. It's Gujarati. Maybe you'll find other Hindus now because of all the pomp and show of the marble temple. It's primarily a Gujarati. So you know, ultimately, Vishal, if we are sincere, then Ishvara will make those connections for us. You know,
can it be
when people seek, right? They seek, they want a community, they want a guru, whatever it is. Ultimately, it's a matter of surrendering in the heart. That all comes. One has, because it's Ishvara. If we really approach Ishvara, Ishvara is going to arrange from his side. It's a personal relationship. He will allow us to find our sangha, and the sangha could be just 2 or 3 people. When you get to the deep level, it's going to get narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower. So if you're going from a cultural piety, and then you're slowly whittling it down to people who are 50-50, and by down to real commit, it's going to be less. if you have a wife who does rituals, you're fortunate, because you could do the same rituals in a different bar with a different state of mind. She might be doing whatever, but the fact that you at least can share a ritual space without weirdness and vibes and what's all this, that's a great, that's being a Hindu is actually good karma in that regard. Because you have all of that. Now it's up to you. You could be doing that same exact thing externally as your wife, but your mind is in a different place, and you could still have a nice harmonious, shared puja practice, and you can tidy that up a little bit, dust it off a little bit, start offering your food more thoroughly, and all of that. Your wife, it sounds like, won't resist it, or at least she's in principle she's on board. So that's all good. And she doesn't have to join you in the same mental place. So you can, what's going on in your mind may not be what's going on, and she might be doing it for the kids or for piety or for blessing. That's fine. Let her do that. It's all sattva. It's all good.
Quick question. How do you strengthen your surrender muscle?
Just get fed up with being kicked around and being frustrated all the time. And pay attention to that. Own it. Embrace it. Instead of making up stories like, oh, I'm so tough, I'm so powerful, I'm so good, I'm so capable of start being mindful of how we're constantly in a state of unfulfillment and frustration. Nothing very glamorous. Just when when do we surrender? Like in a boxing match, right? There are two opponents. Guy gets knocked down, stands up, knocked down. When does he surrender? Well, he had enough of it. Finish. They surrender. That's it. KO. So it's a bit like that. There's nothing very lofty about it. You start paying attention to the fact that we're unfrustrated, and society doesn't want us to pay attention to that. Society's going to tell us, oh no, don't think like that. You're a loser if you're unhappy. Oh, so we don't allow ourselves to recognize that. And we make up all these stories. But stop that. Start off by saying, look, let me pay attention. Am I happy? No. Stop. That's a place to start, just being honest. And then when we recognize that everything we do to try to resolve that doesn't quite resolve it, then that's how we strengthen our surrender muscle. Then it becomes more obviously inevitable that there's nothing we can do to solve our existential crisis and our deep level sense of frustration. And it's not negative talk. This is wisdom talk. All moksha traditions accept that as a starting point. Wisdom traditions, in Sanskrit are called moksha traditions, the mokshavadins. What's the number one starting point? Where does the path start? Where's the first noble truth of Buddhism? Dukkam. Recognizing I'm satisfied. And our Vijja society doesn't allow you to recognize it. It keeps telling you, first of all, it fills you up with nonsense TV. It distracts you as far as possible. And if that doesn't work, then it fills you up with intoxicants and alcohol and the rest of it, all designed to keep you away from existential reflection. So I would say the place to start is just pay attention to your own mind and be honest with it. And if you realize you're frustrating, instead of thinking it's a bad thing, oh, I'm doing something wrong, oh, my friends are going to think I'm a loser. No, embrace that as the first. In fact, the very first word of the first time Patanjali uses the word wisdom is when he says sarvam dukkam. Everything is frustrating. And then he uses vivekinaha. A wise person thinks like that. That's wisdom. Check it out. 218. Go to Patanjali. I can't remember if it's 215 or 218. The first time he says, who is a wise person? A wise person who understands everything is frustrating. Then in bhakti, then we surrender to Bhagavan. In jnana, we try to cultivate knowledge of different paths. That's your surrender muscle. Suffering.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please do. We take advantage of the moment. We never know, our paths may never cross again.
Okay.
Unless you come to the Isle of Wight next year. We'll have to see how it all looks.
Yeah, let's hope. Well, so the world as it is in the age of Kali with the surveillance and...
This is Krishna Priya, everybody. She is a a Krishna Bhakta from, where is it, Massachusetts, right?
No, Saratoga, New York. Hi, everyone.
Oh, Saratoga, New York.
Yeah, upstate. So I'm just wondering a couple questions. I actually have two, but the first one is, how do you pray for the world when, you know, I feel like some people can be very sensitive to God and sensitive to what you're talking about, which is all this horrible input that kids have these days. And we're not being led in the right direction. Everything is distracting from existential questions. And, you know, we're working on ourselves as hard as we can, but how do you not be selfish in your prayer, but you really do want to ask Bhagavan to spread himself, love, truth, and we're living in such anxiety times, and plus there's also karma. So sometimes how I handle, like, say, the refugee crisis, where you see such suffering, and you like, is that people are, the world is just based on this balance, equilibrium of justice that sometimes doesn't work out in this life, or are people just kind of getting retribution, which may ultimately lead them to some kind of salvation, finding God in their own way. So I guess I'm just wondering, how do you try to spread peace in your prayer life and be effective?
I don't know if I have a really good an answer for that, Krishna Priya. Clearly all the texts are, you know, if we're really situated in a place beyond our own body minds, or we're cultivating that, then we're able to see our commonality with all beings. And seeing our commonality with all beings, that's where compassion comes from. It's kind of like a high level selfishness, because compassion comes from empathy. And empathy, really, what is empathy? It's like, well, if I was in that situation, I would be suffering. There's no other way we can function in the world. We can only project ourselves out, right? Consciousness is coming out from our center of our monad, our own Atman. Consciousness is pouring out through that, and it becomes conscious of the other by dint of its own nature of consciousness. So when we see somebody else suffering, really what we're doing is, you know, if we're a tamasic person ignores that, blocks that out, or even enjoys that, and a rajasic person just is not interested in that. But a sattvic person is able to say, as I, so thou. So it's a kind of a projection of the self, but a very high level, sattvic, benevolent one. And from that comes compassion. And so, you know, a saintly person of any type, whether it's a jnani or a bhakta, doesn't want to see anybody suffering physically, even though being a bhakta or a jnani or a yogi, you know, you do believe in the law of karma. You do ultimately understand, well, you know, there is an Atman in there, but that's not very useful to somebody that's really horrifically suffering. I mean, it's not like a yogi is going to sit there and watch someone suffer horrifically and just mumble some knowledge, wisdom, truism, oh, you're not the body. So it's, you know, so therefore one has to, right? This is the Maitreyi in Patanjali, you know, you friendship and compassion, these qualities are there, but alongside of them, there's also deep level knowledge. There's also deep level knowledge that there is an Atman, and it's not that suffering is random. It's not that it has no cause. It's not that it's just a bunch of atoms and molecules and gravity and subatomic forces and electric magnetic fields just bumping into each other. And it's not just some whimsical God whose mind we cannot question or understand. There is a cause, and that is karma. So you may understand that, but that doesn't necessarily, you know, but obviously there is compassion. Now, in terms of what you do about it, well, depending on what your lens is, your ideological, if you want, or your metaphysical lens, if you're a compassionate person, you try to change it according to who you think the person is and what you think the cause is. So if you're a little bit rajasic, then you're going to think, well, it's a political problem. This can be solved politically. Even with the coronavirus, right? It didn't have to be that many deaths. So there could have been. So then you take your service is activism. It's tinged with right. It's great. I'm not saying this is a negative, but or it could be economic. You think, well, The suffering of the world is due to economic. That's your lens, right? There's the gunas that you see things, but at least you're seeing things. At least you're caring. At least you're trying. So according to the lens you have, then you reach out and try to serve the world according to your Shakti, according to your powers. And if you're a real if you yourself have dedicated yourself completely and utterly to the spiritual path, and you ultimately see yourself in a certain way, you ultimately see others in that deep level sort of way, it's not that you're not going to do these other kinds of services, but your service is going to be more connected with, trying to disseminate spiritual teachings, right? And that doesn't mean that you reject these other levels of service. They all have to be there. In fact, most people are going to be, if they serve, it's going to be on a medicine level or a health level or a therapeutic psychology level or an economic level or a political level. These all corresponds to notions of who the self is. And so depending on who you think the self is, if you have that impulse to serve, if you have that sattvic ability to see that person is suffering, I would be suffering if I was that person, then you'll serve according to that metaphysical framework through which you perceive. But if you're a real deep level bhakta, what did the Buddha do? What does Jesus Christ do? What do the real great Jivan Muktas do? They may do philanthropy. They don't, and maybe their followers did philanthropy, but what did they themselves do primarily was try to disseminate spiritual teachings. What we don't want to do is just do that and be oblivious or callous to material reality. So if your question was, what do I do? Well, obviously I dedicated myself to teaching because that corresponds to my understanding of what are the deep level causes. But of course, there's less deep level courses, more intermediary courses, such as political injustices, such as economic imbalances, such as all these other things, physical health related issues. So you have to, if you're witnessing the world and you're not satisfied just sitting at home and just watching TV and feeling bad and meanwhile just getting along with your little life, and you want to sort of get out there and do something, you have to decide, well, what's your metaphysical framework? What do you really think is going to be, maybe in certain situations you need, there's no point teaching Gita to somebody that's, I don't know, has no food. So, you have to decide, you have this life and you want to somehow use some of that energy or all of that energy in serving others. You have to decide how best to put it, but what's everybody else doing? What is really needed? And those are the choices you make. So clearly someone like, Prabhupada made his choice about what he thought the real deep level cause was, and Swami Narayan and so forth, and so forth. Some would say meditation. If everybody meditated, they'd be more peaceful. They'd be more, and they'd all be right. Every single one of them would be right. So some teach meditation, some teach asana, and even within the asana world, look at all the different ways of teaching asana, from just physical well-being to mental well-being. So you find your niche, Krishna Priya, and you decide what do I deeply believe in, and let me, whatever that is, what do I deeply believe is in the ultimate interest of others, and then you give yourself to that and honor all these other ways. I don't know if that really touches your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. And the second question?
Sorry, everyone, real quick, this one. Like the 16th century, like so much was happening with Lord Chaitanya and everything. And I'm just wondering historically.
Who knows?
Right.
Was there some cosmic influence? Who knows? People talk about the axial age, like 5th century BCE. There was the Buddha, there were the Upanishads, there was Plato and Aristotle, and they called it the axial age. Was there who knows? Okay. There's nothing in any text that says anything like that. In other words, how do you know something, right? Think of your pramanas. So you have pratyaksha, where you can't see that if there was a cosmic influence in the 16th century, you can't see it. Can you infer it? What you're talking about is an inference.
Right.
There's no words that describe it, because there's no scripture that says, oh, there is this cosmic 5th, 16th century. So therefore you're making an inference that certain things were happening in the world. Obviously devotees like to think it was Chaitanya, but of course they would think that, wouldn't they? Renaissance in Europe, So you make an inference, this is unusual, and therefore it is not explainable by normal historical developments. Therefore, there must have been some, whatever you want to peg it as being, the influence of, an influx of great souls or whatever. That's an inference you're making. You'll never know whether it's a true inference or a false inference. There's nothing to compare it against. Right? When you say there must be smoke, there's fire on the mountain because there's smoke, well, you have millions of other instances of wherever there's fire, there's always smoke. So you see smoke, you make an inference, there's fire. So you can prove that. But the kind of inference you're talking about is unprovable. I'm not saying that makes it wrong. It just makes it speculative. And it could be the case. I'm not in any way undermining that. I'm just saying there's no authoritative way of saying it is so or it was so. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Grab the moment, my friends. Otherwise, I will do this. And then I'll click the off button. And then I will wish you all Godspeed in your bhakti. Because I'm a bhakta. So when I teach bhakti, I teach from in my deep place. When I teach Patanjali Yoga Sutra, I teach from a place of psychology, and it's all I hold Patanjali to be everything true, but it's but my own practice is highly embellished bhakti, and Patanjali is so skimpy in his Ishvara Pranidhana section that it doesn't nourish my heart sufficiently. So although it's there, so therefore, any other questions?
Edwin, what are some of your practices?
Well, I do about an hour of japa, which is a Chitta Vritti Nirodha practice on the Hare Krishna mantra. So my own form of Bhagavan that I made a connection with in the 70s was Sri Krishna came to me through originally the Krishna movement, as a matter of fact. I was a Krishna for about 7 years, a full-time monk, shaved head, saffron, in the late 70s and early 80s. And then I left that, but remained in the larger Vrindavan tradition, which is a holy place in India where there's many different branches of the Krishnaism. So then I reconnected to a different branch, but essentially the same practices. So my own, answer your question, japa for an hour, which is Patanjalian style. Then I do puja, and I think I sent a link to Karen, and she can send it to you all. I don't know if she has a group email, but otherwise she can send it. So I do puja, and that can take an hour. Like this morning, I went out in the garden. I got some beautiful flower. I have a beautiful yard. So so all of these flowers, I try to make a nice arrangement. And then I'll prepare food, and then I'll, even if I'm not ready to eat, at least fruit, and then I'll take it all upstairs, and then I'll do a puja. So that would be that part of it. And then of course I study all day, and I've created a life whereby I can maintain myself by teaching. So therefore svadhyaya, basically the rest of the day is svadhyaya, because either I'm when I'm not pulling up poison ivy, but either I'm studying and I'm teaching. I've made it that way. So, but ultimately, in my mind, I'm telling myself a story that everything I do is for Bhagavan. And sometimes I drift and I don't realize I'm drifting, and my own desires come in and they capture my mind, and I think it's Bhagavan, and then I start going, and then all of a sudden there's warning signals. All of a sudden I start doing things that I know are not what I'm reading in the text, and that's a wake-up call. And then I sort of reconfigure, and then realize, oh, wait a minute, I've let all this stuff creep in, and then resituate myself. So that happens, and that's all good, as long as as long as one pulls oneself back. So I don't know if that answers your question. So japa, I'm not much of a kirtan person, but also there's nobody around here. I like kirtan actually, but of course now with Corona. But I tend to be more of a studious japa sort of person. But kirtan, if that's available. And then you know, but remember, bhakti is every moment, offering everything we do. So for this workshop, so why am I doing this? What's going on in my head? Right? I'm not making money. I'm just sort of, you're all welcome to give a donation, by the way. But what's going on in my head? I see myself as a part of a lineage that our teachers requested us to plant seeds of bhakti in the world, and that makes sense to me. And that, you know, I can't go out and be a doctor. I can't go out and be a political activist. I can't go out and that's.
We lost him.
Not sure what's happened there. I hope he's coming back.
I think he lost connection, no?
He must have. Yeah, he was moving around quite a lot, so maybe, I'm not sure he's realized he's lost his connection. I'll send him an email.
Because before happened to me and I saw the screen without anyone.
It does happen from time to time. He may or may not find out. I'll send him a message. Take me a minute.
Karen, will this video be on his site, or will you be sending it, or is that something Edwin needs to?
Sending it out. I'm having some trouble accessing my email, but we'll be sending it out. We've got hopefully 2 copies of it, so
Okay.
it'll take a little bit of time to just sort it out. It may not be a video. It may be a audio.
Okay, that's fine.
He's coming back. He's coming back.
Oh, is it good? Good, because I'm struggling to get onto my email with this.
Yes, he knows that he's out and he's coming back.
Oh yeah, I'll let him in. Okay, I have to let him in. Okay, he should be here now. Hi, we lost you.
You know what happened? My battery ran out.
Ah.
I was sitting in the garden for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Now I'm indoors.
Good.
Yeah. So sorry about that. So any other questions? From anybody? No?
Can you explain what you've got behind you?
It's a beautiful Orion painting with all of the incarnations of Vishnu in the outer mandala, and in the inner one it's Krishna Leela. I'll show you my temple room, because that answers the lady's question about part of what my practice is. Tell me if this is at the right angle. Can you see?
Yeah, that's great. Yes.
So that's Shiva. Can you see Shiva? Can you see Shiva?
Yes.
Yes.
That's Devi. See?
Yes.
This is Ram. But these are not my forms that I worship. I'm not a bhakta, so this, you can see the difference here, right? Can you see it?
Yeah.
So these are the forms that I worship, which is Radha Krishna. Do I need to angle it? I can't really see what you're seeing.
No, it's good. Maybe a little higher.
See that beautiful temple, everything hand carved?
Yeah.
So this is a puja practice. All of those little items down there all get used. That's my guru with the cow. Can you see him?
Barely.
Can you see?
No, I can see.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay. These are, you see the flowers? They're all from, so that's, you bring flowers, you try to make it, it's just bhakti. You're trying to please Bhagavan. What do you do if your boyfriend brings you flowers? Don't you like that? Don't you feel, isn't that a corny kind of what's corny romance? You go buy some flowers, right? So you do your corny romance with Bhagavan. That's what a bhakta is. Except it's not corny. They're beautiful flowers and they belong to Bhagavan anyway, so there you have it. See, Swami Narayans have beautiful temples. If you get a chance to go to the Swami Narayan temple, you'll see how you can use monumental architectural magnificence. You don't have to, but you can. Or you could just have a simple little shelf in your kitchen or in your living room, little sacred space. And it would be just as much bhakti. Like Krishna Priya has a little table, and she has whatever deities came her way, found a little piece of silk. Where's your altar, Krishna Priya? Do you want to share with us? See behind her, can you see? So it's got nothing to do with whether you have a Swami Narayan temple or you have a whole room like I do, or whether you have a shelf. Because bhakti is all about the heart. Anybody can do it.
Yeah, I don't think I do mine very well, but
the point is, look how much devotion there is there. And that's what it's all about. Why should, Bhagavan doesn't care about marble. He cares about the heart. Boy, it looks like you got half the MoMA museum up there on the wall.
yeah, got those for like 10 euros in Paris from the actual artist. So.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Very nice, Krishna Priya.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.
May Bhagavan or Bhagavati steal your heart in some form or fashion. If you open it, it will be stolen. You just have to open the door. You don't have to worry about anything, I guru or this or that or sangha. You just have to open the heart, samarpana. But then it all happens. Bhagavan is a person. So if he sees that we approach him, then he'll take all arrangements. I know that for a fact, at least in my own experience and all of those that I know, like me. God bless.
Much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jai Shri Krishna. Actually, that's Gujarati. What the Vrindavan folks say is Jai Shri Radhe. The Gujaratis come from Gujarat and they say Jai Shri Krishna, but the locals in Vrindavan, they don't say that. They say Jai Shri Radhe. She's the boss. Girl power. Okay, Jai Shri Radhe.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
How do I get out of this?
You need to leave. You need to press the leave button.
Oh, I'm hitting the wrong thing. Oh.
I'm just staying till the end here.
Oh, okay. No, I was wondering.